Chapter 11. 13 years after $2 bills sold him to a stranger at a park, he and $2 Chuck meet up at a burger place for a couple of beers. Chuck doesn't remember much. Bill says Mom's dead. Chuck says he doesn't remember much about Betsy, but Bill knows he remembers enough. Bill doesn't ask the question because he thinks he knows the answer. Chuck says he got put in the back of the car, then it was the factory after that. Bill doesn't work, hasn't ever had a job as far as any tax collector is concerned. Chuck's still a mechanic, even if his adult hands no longer fit in all the small nooks and crannies anymore. Now he's at a place that'll pay him half a decent wage, and he doesn't sleep on the factory floor anymore. They leave together, sun going down, and they end up at the park where they parted ways all those years ago. "I think you owe me a push on the swings, Bill," says Chuck. "Sure," says Bill. One push, two pushes, Bill takes the hammer out of his pocket, 3 pushes. "Come on, you can push harder than that." Chuck swings back, and Bill buries the claw of the hammer in the back of Chuck's skull. Chuck slumps in the swing. Bill takes his wallet and his hammer and doesn't look back. The last time he saw his brother, he was sitting in the swing set, just like he always was. On the bus out of town, the living brother checks the wallet, a driver's license, and a $2 bill. All that is left on earth belongs to the great work. Chapter 12. My friend, the cabbie, found himself in a middle-sized city in the middle of the country after a middle-life bender that left him 2 friends down and no money to his name. He took to driving drunk folks from the bars to the suburbs, and that kept $1 or 2 in his pockets. His first friend, the cabbie told me, and the trolley man on a ride across town, was a man named Wizard who killed himself in an unremarkable fashion. And so the cabbie bought anything with a wizard on it to remember him. The second friend, a man named Bandit, is still alive. But the cabbie didn't know that at the time. He mourned them both the same. Bandit drove through a neighborhood at 107 miles per hour without once touching his brakes and rolled his 2.5-ton pickup through a reasonable used sedan, killing a woman and her pregnant friend instantly. Bandit didn't feel like sticking around after that. He made some friends who agreed that he would be declared dead in exchange for a couple of favors he's never going to be able to pay off. And now, he slips just a little bit of concentrated nicotine into every cup of coffee he serves 2.5 states away. Not enough to kill you, just enough for you to know that something's wrong. And you know that something's wrong, don't you? The cabbie wore a bandana to remember Bandit. He told every part of the story that he knew to a nice young couple in the back of his car, and turning around in his seat to show a picture of the sign Bandit once stole from a dive bar bathroom, holding his phone in both hands with tears in his eyes, he slowly veered into oncoming traffic. The world is a broken facsimile of what is to come. Chapter 13. The candy man owns the candy shop, and I think it's the best in town. Most of the stuff is made in store by folks who like to make it so it tastes better and costs more. I'm partial to the black licorice. The candy man works 7 days a week, even if the store is closed. Sometimes there's no candy to make, and the candy man sits in a chair with the lights off and breathes for a while. The candy man has a roommate. He's had a roommate his whole life, and the roommate loves candy more than he loves the man that makes it. But the candy man can live with that. He's already lived with it for so long. So the candy man goes to work, and he makes candy, and he sells some, and leaves some, and takes some home to his roommate, who used to eat the candy, but has been slowly rotting into his recliner for months, or years, or however long it's been, under a growing pile of candy. And the room smells so sweet. Heaven comes for each of us when we have finished our part in the great work, and no sooner. Chapter 14. Perhaps I was wrong when earlier I implied that you sought out these words, as if any sense of intentionality could have as much power as that. Certainly, there are those who hunt these words down and feast on them as wolves would to a carcass. But there are others who have been brought together by other means. Perhaps you are one of those whose spirit dragged you here. But even that seems an incomplete image, for if you are here and still here, perhaps, like celestial bodies, some great gravity has brought our spirits together. This transfer of the potential to the inevitable is what we have come to call the great work, the orbit of those so-called celestial bodies. Or, if you will permit me a more apt image, the dancing of our spirits, combined with the workings and shedding of our bodies on the mortal plane. The great work is all of these things combined and more. With this, the inevitability of heaven begins. Chapter 15. In another time in my life, I was acquainted with two individuals who everyone in their lives had come to know as Sad Sack and the Grump. They worked the line at a greasy spoon and called in sick at least once a week, always on the same day as each other, to stay home, play cards, and complain. "You're cheating," says one. "You too," says the other. And it goes like this till one day, Sad Sack gets tired of being a sad sack, goes to the Grump and says, "We can't keep living like this." "Why not?" says the Grump. "It makes me miserable," says Sad Sack. "You were always miserable," says the Grump. "Or at least, that's what you always told me." "Well, I don't want to be miserable anymore," grumbles Sad Sack. "What do you want to be?" asks the Grump. Sad Sack had never thought of that. So Sad Sack and the Grump called in sick and played cards, and that night, when the Grump wasn't around, Sad Sack called his mother. "Mom, what did I want to be when I grew up?" And Sad Sack's mother just laughed at him till he hung up. Over the next few days, the Grump had to listen to Sad Sack complain all day about how much he was complaining, so the Grump figured he'd help. "Hey, Sad Sack, I think I figured out how you can be less miserable." "Really?" "Sure. You ready?" But the Grump didn't wait for a response. He just pushed Sad Sack's face into the deep fryer till he stopped twitching. When they pulled him out, he was smiling, and nobody in that kitchen called in sick anymore. From the seed of humility, all else grows. Chapter 16. I used to buy my meat from Butcher Bubs by the pound, and he had a smile with a few less teeth every time, till finally there was nothing left to smile about. "Can't eat the meat no more," Butcher Bubs would say. "Ain't got the teeth to chew it." Bubs didn't want to get dentures. "Ain't no one gonna chew my food but me," he'd say. "Especially not some well-schooled dentist." And he'd spit on the floor when the health inspector wasn't looking. I kept going to Butcher Bubs to buy meat by the pound, and he'd smile with a few less pounds on him every time, till finally there was nothing left to smile about. One day, I went to pick up my meat. His wife said he finally withered away. But he was hanging around the back if I wanted to say goodbye. What we leave behind is the fuel for the great work to continue its turning. Chapter 17. Big Mister earned his name by the size of his gun, which he kept well oiled and ready to fire above his ever-burning hearth. And Little Mister got called that by mean men to keep him little. On Wednesdays and Sundays, Big Mister would send Little Mister into the woods to hunt, and Little Mister would come back empty-handed. And Big Mister would laugh and remind Little Mister why he was so little. Then Big Mister would go out into the woods and come back with some slobbering beast, and make Little Mister clean and cook and eat the little scraps of the thing. Big Mister made a big show of this twice-weekly occurrence, But when little mister spent all evening in the woods trying to make big mister proud, and he was out till the shadows from the trees nearly touched big mister's big windows. And then little mister came back with some little game. Big mister found himself with a big hunger. That next Wednesday, little mister knew he was followed into the woods, and big mister didn't try to hide his heavy footsteps. And it didn't last too long, all things considered. But by the time big mister got his little game back to his big house, he remembered there wasn't anyone left to clean or cook it. Those who cannot play their part in the great work alone cannot bask in the glow of heaven's light. Chapter 18. Castle Jones lost 3 fingers in his first week on the job, and the boys all cheered when he kept working. Later that month, he gave up that whole hand to hear them cheer again. Then Castle Jones walked with a limp after taking a hard hit to his knee. But when he brought a cane to work, the boys laughed, and Castle Jones didn't like that much. Castle Jones screamed himself hoarse the day his pretty long hair got caught in a machine, but the boys said they liked his scars better anyway. And when Castle Jones lost an eye, he sold the putrid thing off to the highest bidder, and then everyone wanted a piece of Castle Jones. A few years later, one of the boys who knew him struck it rich on a lotto ticket and went around buying up all the pieces and getting his wife to sew him back together. We are bound together, all of us, by thread and careful needle. Chapter 19. There's a shrinking factory town with a forgotten church that nobody goes to anymore. And every weekday at 8 a.m., Eliza wakes up in a forgotten motel room to climb that forgotten church's tower and ring that forgotten bell all day. She takes weekends off, of course. She just does this for the cash. She tried not doing it, and the cash in the unmarked envelopes stopped showing up. So she wakes up at 8 a.m. and leaves the forgotten motel where there's no one left to pay her rent to, and goes to the church with the broken windows and no electricity, to climb the ladder with the 3 missing rungs, and ring a bell for 8 hours with a break for lunch, which she makes herself. And one day, she'll die when the tower falls over and the bell crushes her and the cash stops coming. To be granted a role in the great work is a reward unto itself. Chapter 20. 3 dead men and a pile of money in the back of a bookshop in an up-and-coming downtown. 2 dead men, a bleeding man stuffing his pockets, and a pile of money in the back of a bookshop in an up-and-coming downtown. 1 dead man, 2 men with 1 plan each, and greed in their hearts, 2 guns and a pile of money in the back of a bookshop in an up-and-coming downtown. Bookworm and Four Eyes pointing a pair of pistols at the Dork over a pile of money in the back of a bookshop in an up-and-coming downtown. Many years earlier, 3 kids who got bullied all the way to the front of the bus tell each other their real names and laugh for the first time this school year. Tonight, a transplant who moved to the middle-sized city in the middle of the country to open a series of car washes calls in a noise complaint from his apartment above a bookshop in an up-and-coming downtown. All things that last end forever in the smallest moment, and are remembered forever by the ones who find heaven.